now is just remain calm and stay on the line with me until the police arrive.
Hey guys, welcome to Short Notice Horror. Today's video is a video that wasn't really something that I planned to talk about, but I've rewatched these films and I decided to myself, oh, maybe this is worth a conversation because I know everyone is a fan of these films, everyone within the genre. And Art the Clown seems to have exploded as a pop icon. I mean, you see him everywhere. People are getting tattoos. There's like posters everywhere. And outside of the horror genre, he's like seeping into the mainstream. But upon watching the films again recently, all three, and the third's obviously just come out within the last few months, it made me think, where's this series going? When Terrifier 1 came out, it was a low-budget, apparent low-budget film, but it was something fresh about it, and it wasn't the gore. The gore is extreme, and it's funny, and it's never realistic, so the stories of people puking in the aisles and things like that, I would imagine that's the mainstream coming in to these films and not knowing what to expect, which really took off with the second one. And I think maybe people had seen the second one, hadn't really seen the first. Obviously, Art had showed up previously in short films, but it wasn't until the first Terrifier, when David Howard Thornton took over as Art the Clown, that it really started to take off. And he's great in the film. I mean, he's brilliant, he's funny, he's menacing, he's scary, and he brings everything to the character that we've come to know now that throughout the three films. But still, the first one is my favourite. And I think it's because of that dirty, grimy aesthetic. I really enjoyed the low-budget aspect, and maybe it's just coming from a low-budget film world himself, being a low-budget filmmaker, and I mean really fucking low-budget, like no money. And I really appreciated everything that went into it. Damien Leone directing it, writing, and obviously doing all his own special effects and practical effects for that film. Now, with part 2 and part 3, I know part 2 is a huge part of it, part 3 is a huge part, but as the budgets got bigger and the story got bigger and the expectation of gore got way bigger, then he had to bring on some people to help with that, which is understandable. But moving from the first film, which just had a basic premise, a simple premise that we've seen in lots of horror movies, two girls are stalked by a maniacal killer. They get locked in an abandoned building, and it sort of kicks off from there. There was never any rhyme or reason to Art and what he was doing, much like the original Halloween. You didn't really need an explanation as to why he was so fucking mental. He just was. As Terrifier 2 came along, the story obviously got bigger, the length of the film got a lot longer, unnecessarily so in my opinion. But I understand there was a lot of people that put money into it. It was a crowd-funded film, and they wanted to give people as much bang for their buck as possible, and they certainly did that with Terrifier 2. Bringing in the new characters, introducing the final girl. I mean, there was the final girl aspect to the first one, but very much the way a Psycho had a final girl that set you up to think she's going to get away. If you've seen it, obviously you know she doesn't. And that was really carried over into the second film, where they introduced the final girl, and she's now carried on through the main stories and more likely into the fourth. Now in the second film, introducing the family itself, and again the final girl, played by Lauren Lavera as Sienna, it started to bring in that mythology that I think has not spoiled isn't the wrong word, because Terrifier 2, I get a huge amount of enjoyment out of it, but it introduced a story that didn't really seem to go anywhere, with yes, the expectation, as I've mentioned, it would come into 3, but when 3 came out, it almost sidelined Sienna. Now, without knowing where the fourth film was going to go, that seemed an odd choice to me. We introduced this final girl character, her mother got bumped off, which was a fucking godsend because the lady that, no offense, but the lady that played the mum in Terrifier 2 was just so aggravating, and I personally didn't think she gave that great a performance, so I was glad to see her get bumped off. Coming into the third one, where Sienna, it's obvious that she's had some mental trauma from the events of the second film, which again, you can understand why. She just seemed to get sidelined, and Art became like the main character of the film, which I understand a lot of people wanted. But the gore, even the kills in Terrifier 3, they didn't match Terrifier 2. It seemed to get to that point where it was, how can we outdo ourselves? And I don't believe they did outdo themselves. I think the scene where the daughter gets killed in Terrifier 2, the bedroom scene, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It didn't get surpassed in the third film. Now, I understand that can be difficult to do. Very difficult to do, because how do you get past all this shock? And how do you shock people even more? How do you get past what you did in the second film? And yes, there's the shower scene. Yes, it's overtly gory. Yes, it goes very, very over the top. But it never really matched Terrifier 2 for me. Again, Terrifier 1 is still my favourite of the trilogy. And with Terrifier 3, they solidified the character of Art, but again, they introduced more mystery as to who he is and why he's doing what he does. I personally don't need that in my slasher films. I don't need to expand upon why they're doing what they do. Yes, it was introduced again in the second one, and it set up a bit of intrigue, but if the third film didn't answer that question and they're going to finish on the fourth, then there's going to be a fuck lot of information to be rammed into that story. Now, unless it's a 3-hour slaughter epic, which it may be, I don't think it needs to be, then I think there's an expectation that's been set that I really hope they can achieve, but there's just that bit of me that thinks, I'm not so sure. Much like any horror franchise that goes into a third part, a fourth part, and I don't believe it's going to go into a fifth and sixth. It's not to take away anything that Damien Leone's done, because he has achieved amazing things. The box office for Terrifier has just blown away the competition, even as far as big budgeted films are concerned. Everyone went out to see it, so it's done its job. Many, many millions of dollars, made its budget back way, way more than probably Damien Leone expected. And that's a good thing, and it's a great thing for horror, but these are films for horror fans. When the mainstream starts to come in and there what blows that budget up, then it's easy to get lost. Now, I've seen many interviews with Damien Leone, and he doesn't come across as a guy who would ever bow to mainstream. And I know he's been offered a lot of money to let Art go into like the Blumhouses of the world, and he's turned it down. So fair fucks to him. I just hope that he can stick the landing with the fourth film. And then what I would love to see is to go back to the basics of the first film, the dirty, grungy aesthetic that he showed. You know, pare down the story, bring the story back to minimal. Now, it was never that it went massive and there was loads of characters, but if they can just bring that mythos back of what they're trying to introduce with Art, solidify it, get it done and dusted, and then have the main battle between Sienna and Art and wrap all that up, I think that'll be the perfect ending for the film. I mean, really the question is, where do you think Terrifier goes? Is it a flash in the pan that's going to last a couple of years, or does Art the Clown have the staying power of Freddy, of Michael Myers, of Jason? I mean, they're the big three. People thought at one point Pinhead was going to have that staying power, but it fizzled out. And even the most recent Hellraiser film proved that it doesn't really have the staying power. Maybe it was just approached in the wrong way. But again, I enjoy the Terrifier films. I think so far it's been a great trilogy. There's ones that are stronger than others, but that can be said about a lot of horror franchises. And I'd rather take that over fucking Winnie the Pooh or Peter Pan or whatever that shit is. I have no idea. Tried to watch one, no thank you, turned it off, wasn't for me. So yeah, the question is, where do you think Art's going to go? And how much of an impact will he have on future low budget horror? I mean, you're starting to see the likes of Stream, which you know Damien Leone had a producing hand in, and those were pretty extreme deaths and gore in that film as well. So, I mean, it's a positive thing, but is art becoming too mainstream? And did it slip a bit in the third film? I know what my opinions are. I'd love to know yours. So yeah, again, wasn't a planned video. It's just something that was on my mind and I thought it might be an interesting topic of conversation. So let me know in the comments if anyone wants to chip in. Like I say, it's not arguing with anybody's opinion. Everybody's got their own opinions, which is great. Love it. Stick with it. But there you go. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hopefully get some more reviews up for you within the coming weeks. Until then, enjoy the movies. All the best. Cheers.